Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to 5 to Thrive Live, a podcast about thriving for those who have been affected by cancer and chronic disease. I'm Dr. Lisa Schuler, and I co-host with my good friend Carolyn Gazella. You can find all of our past show podcasts on every major podcast outlet and the schedule on ithriveplan.com. Well, tonight I'm very excited because I'm going to be talking to one of my favorite people on this planet, and that's Dr. Beth DuPree. She is a force of nature. She's a breast surgeon and an integrative physician, and she has deep knowledge in what works. So she's also been, of late, investigating a lot of ways to support healing on more subtle but very powerful ways, which include various forms of energy healing. And related to all this is our topic tonight. She's going to be walking us through the vagus nerve, the great wandering nerve of the body, which is, as we're going to learn, one of the most critical and overlooked parts of health. So we have a lot to learn tonight with Dr. Beth DuPree, who's taken time away from the OR to be with us tonight. And before we get to the interview, I do want to thank our sponsors. First, Cetria, a patented form of glutathione clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is the master antioxidant in the body's primary defense against free radicals, and you can learn more at cetriaglutathione.com. We also thank ProThrivers Wellness Supplements, including ProThrivers Wellness Brain, which is a product specifically for thrivers that contains cognizin for memory, focus, and attention, as well as some other brain-supporting nutrients and herbs. And you can find ProThrivers Wellness Brain at pureformulas.com. And finally, Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, a best-selling probiotic for over 30 years with 12 probiotic strains, all of which are shelf-stable due to their unique 3-year fermentation process, and you can learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. And with that, Beth, welcome to 5 to Thrive Live. Do we have Beth with us? You might be muted, perhaps.
Hear me?
Or there we go. Hi.
You got me?
I gotcha. Don't go away. Uh-oh. It seems like a little bit of a bad connection, maybe.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
It's the electronics. It's all this bioelectric stuff.
Okay,
it
well,
creates
think
havoc
good thoughts.
when it's not working in concert.
Send good thoughts to all your electronics because we want you here with us for this show. And I just want to welcome you. So let's start. Let's start right in because we got a lot to talk about. So let's start with talking about what the vagus nerve is and why is it so important in health.
So the vagus nerve is the communication between the brain and the body. And the term vagus means wandering, and it truly does. It wanders from the brain to the neck, to the heart, to the lungs, to the gut, and most importantly, the immune system when it comes to cancer and to treating disease. And the vagus nerve is really interesting because it is a sensing nerve as well. It's like an antenna. So it can sense things systemically, send the message back to the brain. The brain then sends a signal back. And it's meant to keep us in what we call homeostasis, or help us to rest, repair, regulate, and obviously return to calm after a time of stress. And so it's so important because in my cancer patients, regulating that vagus nerve stimulation has become one of the mainstays to what we call survivorship, because it's not enough just to survive. We want our patients to thrive.
So okay, this is very interesting to me. So the the vagus nerve is like this, as you said, this major connector in the body, receiving messages, coordinating everything, getting us back into balance. So 2 questions. Why have we not paid attention to this in survivorship care before? And why is it so important in survivorship care?
When we first started looking in survivorship care, I think you remember we started with a piece of papers called survivorship care plans where we checked the boxes and patients like, oh, you had your biopsy, you had your surgery, you had your radiation, you had your chemo, you're taking your medicine, and check the box, you are surviving. And so for a lot of our patients, they go back to those first couple appointments after treatment, and that's it. They're kind of left at the place where, well, your treatment's done, your scans are clear. And if we don't query and investigate deeper, we don't find out that our patients are exhausted. They're anxious. They have insomnia because they have the ticker tape going through their brain. Oh my God. They have fear, false evidence appearing real. What is my cancer going to come back? How would it do anything? So what's happening is their bodies and their nervous systems are dysregulated. And what we know to be true is survivorship is not just absence of disease. It actually requires us to restore physiologic resilience. And it's that resilience that is brought about by having your vagus nerve stimulated and healthy and be in balance.
Okay. Yeah, so important. I mean, actually, I think you really got onto something very important there, which is almost like paraphrasing you a little bit. People who emerge through the treatment of cancer can check all the boxes, not only on that form, but in terms of, okay, their blood pressure is fine, their kind of immune cells are back into normal range, they've basically have no digestive issues, so they're good. But in fact, to your point, getting all those things back online requires so much energy and effort, they can actually feel quite exhausted, and never mind all of the sort of sequelae, if you will, of the treatment on a mental and emotional level. So all of that starts to point towards this autonomic nervous system dysfunction. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that and connect it in with the vagus nerve.
Absolutely. So I have patients that come back to the office and say, I'm absolutely exhausted, but I can't sleep. And they can't sleep because sometimes it's the perseveration of those recurring thoughts in their mind, or they just can't relax. Sometimes they have anxiety, depression, they have residual brain fog from chemo, which we know is real. And it's the inability to adapt and adjust to the stressors of every day. And our autonomic nervous system was made so it was a really well planned out idea that if your body can rest and digest, which is what the vagus nerve brings about, you can recover. But if you are in a state of cortisol storm, which a lot of our patients end up there after cancer, because our sympathetic nervous system was made so that when the saber-toothed tiger was coming after us, we're going to say, oh my God, I got to go. And you run really fast and you stop to get away from the saber-toothed tiger. Mm-hmm. But after cancer, sometimes people stay in the, oh my God, that saber-toothed tiger of cancer is after me. It's going to get me, even though you've done the treatment. And so when the sympathetic tone remains high in that cortisol state and the parasympathetic repair state is low, we end up with inflammation, sleep disorders, and our immune resilience suffers. They all suffer because our body heals when we can rest, digest, and actually sleep effectively.
Mm-hmm. So you would say then that key to that is vagal tone. And I mean, is that true? Is that like one of the first things that needs to be functioning well for people to gain that recovery?
Well, after having just completed our clinical study using a non-invasive vagus stim technology called MindVibe, I can tell you definitively, it's been the missing link. We did a study of 60 women who'd already gone through all their traditional treatment, surgery, chemo, radiation. Some were on medication, some were not. Pretty much everybody across the board had some level of autonomic dysfunction. We measured their heart rate variability, which I'll talk about later at the beginning and the end. And if someone has a good vagal tone and they have good homeostasis, they can move back from activation into restoration and building resilience. But if that break is weak, if that vagal tone is weak and their body is continuing to spend energy day after day after day, it's why they become fatigued. And so patients will say, oh my gosh, I used to be able to handle these little things in life. And now, someone drops a carton of milk in the kitchen and I melt because I can't handle that physiologic stress. And so it's almost like you've lost that flexibility to flex your autonomic muscle. And your autonomic nervous system muscle is your vagal tone, where when you can breathe through a situation, where you can relax yourself and get into a state of calm, you can adapt and adjust and respond, as opposed to the sympathetic, which is react and you retreat. And so it's about learning about this balance. And it's not something that I was ever trained to understand in my traditional, in my surgical training, in my oncology training. Nobody ever talked to me about the vagus nerve. I got here because I started looking at bioelectric technologies that could impact my patients' recovery. It was initially trying to get patients off of SSRIs and anxiolytics that I thought was going to be the big thing. But what I came to realize when I really took the deep dive into this great nerve, thank you, Kevin Tracy, who wrote a phenomenal book, I learned about so many aspects of the vagus nerve that I didn't know. We weren't taught that in med school. We were taught the vagus nerve has two branches, it wanders through the body, blah, 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 blah. I know how to dissect it anatomically. I know that if I bag the recurrent laryngeal during a thyroid surgery, your vocal cords don't work. So we learned the anatomic and basic physiologic principles of the vagus nerve, but we didn't understand the connection between the vagus nerve and, neuromodulation, or psychoneuroimmunology, like a new field of cancer recovery.
So interesting. Okay, we're gonna get to some ways that we can support vagal nerve recovery, but I want to just talk through a little bit more on what goes wrong, or kind of some things that are related to this. So that brings me to the inflammatory reflex, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, this is a beautiful reflex. To me, it's one of the most elegant systems that the body has created, because the vagus nerve, like I said, it's like got an antenna. So it senses inflammation in the body. It sends that message back to the brain, communicating that information. The brain then can signal back through its alternate vagal pathways that go back to the body. And it helps to regulate cytokine production, like tumor necrosis factor, interleukin 1, interleukin 6. And so what I talk about is the immune system has an accelerator when it needs to go out and fight an infection, but it also needs to have a break. And the vagus nerve acts as part of that break, because without the vagus nerve, that inflammation can go awry, become chronic, have chronic noise, and self-perpetuating. And we know that inflammation is the nidus for cancer, for other diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes. Inflammation is not a good thing that happens in the body. So being able to regulate the cytokines through the afferent and efferent, to the brain and to the body fibers of the vagus nerve, we have the ability to utilize that inflammatory reflex. And it's a beautiful reflex, but it can get hacked in situations of acute stress, where your body's going to react by creating inflammation instead of turning it off.
So interesting to think that a nerve is really a part of how we downregulate our over exuberant chemical reaction to injury or some other kind of stress. I mean, it makes sense, but it's just, I can see how it was overlooked, because chemicals are chemicals, right? So sort of people get fixated on that, but in fact, here's this amazing nerve that's really orchestrating the whole response,
that's what was really interesting. Is we were trained very much in medical school about the biochemistry of the body, not the nerve pathways, not the bioelectric pathways that one of the things that really it was one of my aha moments of the vagus nerve. I was doing a talk on pathophysiology of pain, and it was for an endometriosis conference. And what I found in preparing for that lecture was a study that looked at endometriosis, which acts like a malignant disease. It's a benign disease, but it acts malignantly. And they took 3 separate groups of mice. They put endometriosis in all 3. One was the regular, just grow the endometriosis. One group, the next group had the vagus nerve cut, and the third group had the vagus nerve stimulated. In the first group, the endometriosis implants grew, kind of like they normally would. In the second group, where there was no vagus stimulation, it was an absolute overgrowth, like an unbelievable bombarding of endometriosis in that abdomen. So losing that nerve stimulation allowed the disease to progress. In the group that had the vagus nerve stimulated, you were able to, that you could see that you could have implants, but they didn't grow. They didn't propagate. And then when they went back and stimulated that first group that had normal growth of endometriosis, they were actually able to watch it regress. So it was an absolute perfect test, because mice, they don't know what you're doing to them. It's a perfect placebo, but the mice doesn't know it has endometriosis, but it's all based on the stimulation of the vagus nerve that created those different pathways. And that was my aha moment of, oh my gosh, if it's doing this in endometriosis. And that's when I took the deeper, and this was several years ago, I took the deeper and deeper dive into the inflammatory reflex and understanding how stimulation of the vagus nerve may play a significant role in immunologic surveillance and helping to prevent cancer from recurring.
Yeah, so interesting. So how does, I'm sure people are listening thinking, okay, I kind of want to know if my vagus nerve is okay. So is there any way that people can get an assessment of how well their vagus nerve is controlling their inflammation and keeping them in homeostasis?
Well, actually, a lot of people are already doing it and they don't even know it, because I'm sure you have walked around and seen the number of Oura rings and different Whoops and Apple Watch, all the things that measure, they're all measuring biometrics. And one of the biometrics that is really important for autonomic nerve function is called heart rate variability, HRV. And HRV is the measure of the beat to beat variation. So if you have a strip of 260 beats and you measure the distance between each of those individual beats of the heart rhythm, you get an assessment of what someone's level of resilience, what their heart rate variability is. The heart rate is not a metronome. It doesn't beat exactly on the same spot all the time. It's responding. So it can speed up, it can slow down. And the heart rate variability is a good assessment of adaptability or strong parasympathetic tone or the vagal input. So it's kind of a window to an individual's level of resilience. It doesn't diagnose everything, but it's a really good real-time physiologic signal. So that's why we chose to measure HRV in our breast cancer patients who were given 5 sessions of non-invasive vagal stimulation and acupressure stimulation to the earlobes. And what we found across the board was the patients responded with an improvement HRV, except in one group so far. And that's the group of patients that are on medications, on SSRIs, which I find really interesting. And we haven't done the complete deep dive. So that was just a tiny snapshot into a few of those patients where their HRV wasn't changing. They felt better. Perceptually, they felt better, but something's happening in that particular subset of patients on meds. And we have our last 2 patients finishing their 12-week follow-up in August. So I'm hoping by mid-October, I'm going to have some really great stats, and I can come back and visit you again and give you all the deep dive into that. But we measured HRV in our clinical study because I wanted an objective measure. We can subjectively say, our patients had less fatigue, they had less insomnia, they improved their overall well-being, they had their distress scores completely improved. But as well as I do that every one of our colleagues that are practicing medicine, they want a piece of real-world data that couldn't be morphed or changed by, oh, well, I like the person that was asking me my questions, so I gave them better answers. You know what I mean? The HRV can't lie, because you put the probes on them, and it takes the measurement over 3 to 5 minutes, and it gives you the answer.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, so let's talk about what we do, so and what you're doing in the study, which is a form of vagus nerve stimulation. So what is that, and how does it work?
So the non-invasive vagus stimulation actually uses low-level milliamperage frequency. It's imperceptible. You can't feel it. But what it's doing, it's basically stimulating the vagus nerve. It's kind of like sending the vagus nerve to the gym and saying, okay, get in there, do your push-ups, do your pull-ups, get your resilience. And the vagus nerve actually, when it's stimulated, the GI tract produces serotonin. One of the biggest producers, people think serotonin comes from only in the brain, but biggest producer of serotonin is the gut. And so not only does it improve HRV, it also increases serotonin. And we found that also improves sleep. So by non-invasively stimulating the vagus nerve, first the right side for 25 minutes, then the left side, and using acupressure point stimulation, we are able to create that sense of calm. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, that's great, but who wants to be hooked up on a machine? And the answer is, I don't want my patients hooked up on a machine. I have individuals that are so activated. If I said to them, listen, I can teach you how to breathe, 4 count in, 4 count out. I can teach you pranayama. I can teach you humming and chanting and other ways to stimulate your vagus nerve. I can immerse your face in cold water. But until someone can actually feel what relaxation feels like, it's very hard to get them to do these other modalities to keep them there. And that's why, to me, our technology that we've worked so hard on, MindVibe, to get it to this point, it is a tool in my toolbox. It is the tool to allow my patients to feel what that level of relaxation feels like. And then I can get them to learn how to breathe. I can get them to connect to the earth and ground and do earthing. I can get them to create other opportunities to keep their vagus nerve in check.
Yeah, it's so well said. It's that positive reinforcement and learning at the same time that they're actually getting benefit. What do you think about the vagal nerve stimulators that people can buy off of, online, that kind of you put in your ear or clip onto a portion of your earlobe? Do you think that those work?
There are many, many different vagus stimulation technologies that are available. And we're hoping that ours is going to be available soon as a wellness device. That's the whole idea. I want it to be available for everybody in any home that needs it. I've tried many of the other devices on the market. A lot of them are purported to work based on studies. A few that I've tried they zing you, like you can actually feel the stimulation, like you get a zip. And for someone who's anxious, getting a zip on the neck or in the ear is not a good thing. But I would tell anybody, if they have significant anxiety, it's worth a try. These technologies, several of them are purported to be very good. I'm hoping that our technology turns out to be the one that, 4 or 5 years from now, people are saying, oh, you need the MindVibe because that's the one. To me, it's got the science behind it. Dr. Ketz Nelson, who is our inventor, has spent his entire career getting to this point. And I think that our data is incredibly, incredibly strong because a lot of these technologies don't have rigorous scientific data. I would say there's probably 5 or 6 on the market that I know are competitive. So what you need to do is identify the devices, ask for the clinical studies, read the studies, and determine which ones have the most effectiveness, how long it lasts, and what the side effects are if it has any other any other issues, like with stimulating your neck where you get a zing, because you want to know what you're getting into before you buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. And it just occurred to me as you were talking, there might be some value just in, because when one is using those various clip-on things, they're also typically just sitting or calmly in one position. So just that alone is going to help the vagus nerve to some extent. I mean, there's a little bit of that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Just being, I've put people on the MindVibe on my porch, which you've been to in Sedona. And I think have you been to my porch yet?
I have not yet. I know. I really want to come on your porch in Sedona, for sure.
I have a beautiful porch, and There was a young girl here one day. She was a 2-time cancer survivor who had horrible anxiety. And she did half an hour of the mind vibe, and she came inside and she goes, "Oh my gosh, is this what normal people feel like?" And I said, "Yeah, it is." And
Wow.
and I said, "Maddie, listen, if you didn't have wicked anxiety, you'd be sitting out there saying, 'Is it the calm of the red rocks in Sedona and the beautiful view that's making me feel this way?'" But actually, it is the technology that's doing it. But people
Yeah.
can get there on their own. There's a wonderful program called Yoga of Immortals that my husband and I did. It's an 8-week program that had clinically proven effects for anxiety, depression, insomnia. Ishan Shivanand developed it. He's a young Indian yogi who I met through his dad, and they've done the clinical research. So this is why I say we don't need to have technologies to stay there, but sometimes we need these interventions to get there. And then we use breath work and yoga to stay there.
Yeah, love it. I mean, I really think that's very smart, especially the anxiety, and the depth of anxiety is so pervasive now. I think people get caught in this very swirling whirl of, challenging mental, emotional well-being, and they just need to be kind of pulled out of there long enough to get their bearings and then to put all these other good practices into place. So I'm excited. So when is Mind Vibe going to be ready for everybody?
Well, right now they're doing some pre-sales. So some people have had great results are already in. They've already gone to the website and ordered it pre-sale. But my goal is to help get the company funded so that we can actually scale and make the device really affordable, because right now it's not that affordable because it's expensive when you're making just a few devices at a time.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: COVID was not good to startups. From a funding perspective. But I think we're on the upswing. I think we're going to do great. I've had great results with our patients. I have a lot of people that I've treated with it that have helped them with their blood pressure just to regulate, because it helped when you are in a state of calm, you're not as activated. And I think we're on the right. I think we are absolutely on the right path. I'm excited because every clinician, whether it's a functional medicine physician, integrative medicine physician, surgeons, naturopaths, naturopathic oncologists, like everybody's getting on the same page with the vagus nerve, because it is such a powerful tool that all of us need in our toolbox.
Yeah, well said. Well, you seem very calm, so it must work.
It works great. I get on it. It's really good for me when I'm switching time zones, because I can like pop on it and it helps me to kind of like cruise right back into whatever time zone I'm in at the time. So
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so any last words before we finish up?
first of all, if you've survived cancer and you don't feel like yourself, just know you're not broken. You've just gone through a massive life change. Your body is still maybe screaming at you, and to heal doesn't mean that you just kill the cancer cells in your body. It means to restore your nervous system to a place where your body feels safe enough to heal. And that's why I think if you can use breathwork practices, technologies that stimulate your vagus nerve, it's one of the most powerful bridges that we're ever going to have between science and healing. And, hug yourself, give yourself a break, and start that path to healing through bringing your nervous system into homeostasis.
Beautiful. And while you're sitting there getting your vagus nerve activated and achieving calm, you might want to read Dr. DuPree's book, which I neglected to mention in your intro. But
It's okay.
could you tell us where people can find you and your book?
Sure. My first book's called The Healing Consciousness. Second book is called Shifting Gears, and they're both available at my foundation, hcf444.org, or you can just Google The Healing Consciousness. And you can also find me on social media platforms on anything at Dr. Beth DuPree. It's kind of easy. I'm not real creative with that stuff. I stay basic. And you can follow me on social media, and you'll know the day that the Mind Vibe is available, commercialized, where everybody can buy it.
Fantastic. Well, you know what? I just want to finish by saying thank you. Thank you for joining me tonight, but also just thank you for being curious and following your curiosity and moving the needle of our understanding on how to create true wellness in people ever forward. You're a force of nature, as I said in the beginning, and I will close with that as well. And that wraps up this episode of 5 to Thrive Live. So I want to again thank our sponsors, ProThrivers Wellness Brain Formula, Cetria Glutathione, and Dr. Ohira's award-winning probiotic. And just a reminder that you can find all of our past shows at ithriveplan.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And thank you for joining us, listeners. May you experience joy, laughter, and love. It's time to thrive, everyone. Have a great night.